The legendary Curry Motor Speedway, a twin-cylinder motorcycle built by Aprilia. It's a combination that will make any bike enthusiast very excited. My name is Rishabh Bhaskar. Welcome to BikeWale, and today is the first time that we get to ride the Aprilia RS 457. I couldn't have asked for a better start to 2024. The RS 457 is Aprilia's first made-in-India motorcycle, and straight off the bat, I commend them for showing their commitment to the Indian market by launching the bike at Rs 4.1 lakhs. Considering the higher price of competition like the Yamaha R3 and the single-cylinder KTM RC 390 that's cheaper by a little over a lakh, the Aprilia has seemingly hit the sweet spot. But the proof of this Italian pudding is going to be in the way it rides. But before we get down to riding this motorcycle, let's just take a step back and admire its design. If you've seen the Aprilia RS 660 or the RS V4, you would agree that this motorcycle looks like a scaled out version of those motorcycles, and I don't think that's a bad thing because this motorcycle looks absolutely gorgeous. In typical Italian fashion, it's got a nice bold front end with neatly integrated DRLs and the headlamp. You have a turn indicator integrated over here as well, so it looks very lovely, very sleek and quite imposing from the front end. You look at it from the side, and again the fairing looks nice with its cuts and creases, and I like the shark gill-like effect at the side over there. Move to the rear and you have a typical super sport-like styling with a very sleek rear end. But what I appreciate about Aprilia is that they managed to fit a pillion seat that is large enough to accommodate an adult by the looks of it. I also like the way the grab rails have been integrated. There's good attention to detail, and bits like the exposed aluminium frame, the winglets under the headlight, and the sticker shouting out the number of world championships that Aprilia has won surely catch your attention. While it is too early to talk about quality levels, initial impressions are largely positive. The panel gaps on our test bike were consistent, the paint finish was good, and the finish on the aluminium frame was better than what we'd seen on the prototype bikes. The switches, however, could have been of a slightly higher quality. Despite being a super sport, I think the riding position is pretty comfortable, and I don't think you should have a problem in riding this bike over not really long distances, but for a fair amount of time before needing a break. The seat, first of all, is wide and accommodating. It's quite large. It's contoured quite well as well, so it's narrow over here when it comes towards the tank, and it allows you enough purchase to lock onto the tank in this way. The clip-ons again aren't too low and they're set wide, so if I take the stand off and sit on the motorcycle, as you can see, it isn't really committed. But if you want to get into that super sport position, if you want to ride on the racetrack, you keep your chin down. The only problem is if you're a tall rider, you might want to scoot back a little bit more, and for that you might probably want to take the seat off when you're riding on the racetrack. A parallel twin-cylinder engine with a 270-degree crank. I'm sure it's going to sound good. Let me give you a... So it's idle. I'm going to flip it a bit. Okay, now I'm going to take it to the mid RPMs. And now all the way to the red line. It sounds deep, it sounds characterful, and under the helmet, it sounds even more richer. I think I really like it. The sweet exhaust note is not the only bit that sets this parallel twin engine apart from the rest of the bikes in this class. The way this engine goes about its business is also quite impressive. I think Aprilia have made a very characterful engine. It's a parallel twin, has a 270-degree crank. It sounds really nice, feels very responsive when you're riding it out on the track, and it has so much of torque right from the bottom end. So there were corners where I was in third gear at 20 kph, and when I was exiting, I didn't really need to downshift. So good spread of torque right from the bottom end all around the mid, but the top seems a little on the flatter side. I didn't mind that, and I think for 90% of the twisties that owners will encounter on a weekend ride, the engine's torque spread will ensure that they won't have to work the gearbox to stay in the meat of the power band. This should be the case in the city as well, but we will reserve our judgment about this and about engine heat management for when we get the bike for a full road test. On the whole, this is an impressive, characterful engine, but it is not as manic as a KTM 390 Duke's engine. The racetrack isn't the right place to make any conclusions about ride quality. That said, the suspension did soak up some of the bumps and undulations on the racetrack quite well, which gives you a fair idea of how the motorcycle will perform on the road. And with preload adjustability on both ends, it isn't hard to set the ride as per your weight or for the times when you'll either ride with a pillion or tour with luggage at the back. But where the Aprilia RS 457 truly shines is in the way it handles. For me, one of the best bits about this bike is the handling. It just blew my mind. Full disclaimer here, I'm riding at the Curry Motor Speedway after a gap of almost 2 years. I'm a bit rusty, but that's when a bike as forgiving as the RS 457 really came to my rescue, I could say that. The chassis is so forgiving and so full of feedback that I could take multiple lines around the new layout, and I didn't feel as if I'm out of control. There were times when I was going into C1 and then into C2, and I love the flickability. The feel from the front end is awesome. At no point did I feel as if I didn't have any sense of where the grip levels are at. I think credit also goes to the Eurogrip Pro Torque Extreme tires. They are lovely, so full of feedback again. And I think overall, when you are a new rider, when you're trying to make sense about a racetrack like the Curry Motor Speedway, which by the way is a very technical circuit, something as forgiving as the Aprilia RS 457 is such a boon. The traction control system wasn't intrusive in its least intervening setting, but we couldn't really test the system out properly given the limited time on offer. As for the ride modes, there's a perceptible difference in power delivery, but we'd want to spend more time with the bike to understand them fully. However, in the sport mode that was set for the track, I felt the throttle response was great and the power delivery had the right amount of aggression without being hairy. As a track bike, the RS 457 is rather impressive, but the racetrack also exposed an issue with the brakes. For reasons best known to Aprilia, they fitted organic brake pads instead of sintered brake pads, and this robs the brakes of some much needed bite, especially while braking late. The company adds that it will offer sintered pads as an aftermarket accessory, but we think these should have been added as standard. It is, however, a small issue, and one can always upgrade to better braking hardware over the course of ownership. We also think that Aprilia should have offered the quick shifter as standard on this motorcycle instead of an accessory. So, should you buy the Aprilia RS 457? Well, I can't really give you a definitive answer because I've only spent about 45 minutes to an hour riding this at the racetrack. On the racetrack, great machine, very forgiving, great for beginners, and I think it's a nice alternative to the KTM RC 390 without spending a lot of money. And I think considering the 4.1 lakh rupees price tag, it sits neatly between the RC on one end and the R3 from Yamaha at the other. Unlike those bikes, the Aprilia RS 457 brings a more characterful engine to the table, and I enjoyed pushing it hard and exploring its potential at the racetrack. Also, at the expense of repeating myself, the bike's handling is what impressed me the most and is surely the cherry on top of the pudding. I wish, however, the braking would have been better. Also, there are a few areas that need more assessment and in the right environment. We need to spend more time with this motorcycle, see what the build quality is like over a period of time, how the engine performs, what the fuel efficiency like, what the service experience is going to be like. Those are the questions that need to be answered, because of which I can't really say definitively if you should really buy it. But on the whole, it does look very promising. I'm really eager to ride this motorcycle out on the road and find out more about this motorcycle, see how it performs in daily life, and more importantly, what it's like to live with.